Alrighty, good evening, everybody. We apologize for the delay. Had a couple of technical issues here, but we are live at the Inside Lowell Studios for tonight's 16th Middlesex State Representative Debate between the two candidates who will appear on your ballot on November 8th. Actually, are already appearing on your ballots as people do mail-in ballots or early voting. Tonight's broadcast is the first debate carried by the brand new Inside Lowell platform, and it is also our first live broadcast. So without any further ado, let's get right to it. Introduce the participants tonight. We have former Lowell City Councilor and former Lowell Mayor Rodney Elliot, who is joining us. He is on the left of your computer screens, or TV screens if you use your TV as your computer screen. Karla Miller, the Republican candidate, is on the right here. Good evening to the both of you, and thank you for joining us and for agreeing to be part of our first live broadcast and first debate.
Good evening, Ted. Nice to see you.
Great to see the both of you again.
I think it's pretty exting to be on the inaugural show of Inside Lowell here.
That's it. You're the kickoff.
We must be special.
Yes, you are. Tonight's debate will be a rather informal format this evening. I'm not one for having somebody off camera holding up cue cards warning you that your time is running out, or have bells and buzzers going off, or a gong to signify that you've run out of time. We will have each of the candidates start with an opening statement. Then we will move into a series of questions, and we'll give you a minute or two to answer the questions. Again, we're not going to hold a stopwatch to you, but the important thing is we want the voters out there, the residents who have not made up their minds yet, to have a chance to hear your stances on the issues and to be able to make an informed decision when they go to the poll. Based on alphabetical order, the opening statements, we will start with you, Rodney Elliot. Mr. Elliot, you have a couple of minutes to make your opening statement.
Great. Thank you, Teddy. And thank you to the sponsors and to the people at home watching. My name's Rodney Elliot. I am a candidate for state representative in the 16th Middle District. I'm here tonight to earn your vote. I've been married to my wife, Laurie, for 28 years. We have 2 daughters, both registered nurses. Very proud of them. And we have 3 granddaughters. When I think of them and their future, I say, what do we need to make sure that their future and every child's future in this district is equally secure and bright? That's why I'm running. Me and my wife, we're from humble beginnings. I'm one of 5. I have 4 sisters. I was actually raised in Little Canada for several years. We moved to Pawtucketville. I attended St. John Duck School in Pawtucketville, where we raised both of our daughters. And Pawtucketville is a great place, but the city of Lowell is a great place to raise a family. I worked my way through college as well as graduate school. My parents taught me the meaning of hard work. My grandparents worked in the very mills that are right downtown here in Hub Hosiery. My grandfather was a shoe cutter for 50 years. So hard work is important. We are middle-class working families. I've been working for 42 years, a 9-to-5 job, commuting in and out of Boston. I've held various positions. Started out as a legislative aide in the Massachusetts State Senate. I was a city planner in Lowell. I was an administrator in Groton. I spent 25 years with the Environmental Protection Agency, and for the last 7, I've been working for state agencies in Massachusetts. A little bit about my background, but look, I believe in Lowell. That's why it's been an honor to serve for 24 years as the mayor and as city council. It never got old. There was always some cutting edge issue or project that the city of Lowell continues to do. We continue to reinvent ourselves, and that's important. That's why I want to continue to run to serve as a state representative. State funding is critical to many of these projects. I'm experienced, I'm energetic, I'm passionate about this city and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I look forward to discussing a lot more issues.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Elliot. Ms. Miller, your opening statement.
All right. Thank you, Teddy. I'm Karla Miller, and I'm running for state representative 16th Middlesex, Pawtucketville, Centralville, North Chelmsford, and the Westlands of Chelmsford. And unlike out-of-touch career politicians who lose sight of why they were first elected, I'm running for office to make a difference in the lives of the people this district by solving problems. As a taxpayer like you, I am fed up with the status quo. Rather than sit by and watch the state be destroyed, I decided to be proactive part of the solution. My mission is to be an advocate for constituents, especially in being relentless to ensure my district receives funding for needed infrastructure and projects. This means constant communication with the city. I appreciate the hardworking people of the state and identify with those suffering taxes and inflation. Cost of living is through the roof in the state, outpacing the rest of the country. I want to be part of helping reverse the course we are on in Massachusetts affordable. I want to bring back common sense policies and additional values to the Commonwealth and work diligently to secure a brighter future by preserving our freedom. Native of Chelmsford, I have resided in Lowell for 20 years. I am married with a daughter and granddaughter. As a businesswoman, I am financially responsible, fiscally conservative, and a problem solver. My qualities of hard work ethics, passionate, and dedication and integrity will allow me to tackle the tough issues we are facing today head on. As your full-time rep, I will hit the ground running. Thank you for inviting me. I want to wish you the best with you.
Thank you. First question to you, Ms. Miller. What is the first piece of legislation you will file if elected?
Oh, there's so many. I think the first piece of legislation that I would have to mental illness crisis. To be solved right away.
Excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat.
Got a tickle right at the wrong time.
At the worst possible time. Mr. Elliot,
Okay.
first piece of were you?
I just, yeah, I have, I have ideas and this, and I feel like it encompasses all of them, which is the homeless, mentally ill, drug addicted, so the alcohol addicted, and I really think we can solve this problem.
All right. Mr. Elliot, to you, first piece of legislation you will file if elected.
The first piece of legislation that I would look at is how we're going to fund the mental health bill that was just passed by the legislature. And I believe that once the sports betting is implemented, that is a source of revenue. To me, on the city side, when the Cannabis Control Commission adopted and allowed communities to sell marijuana, we voted on the Lowell City Council to designate some of those monies, for instance, for outreach, which is required by the law and education, but also a piece to go to the municipal improvements in municipal buildings and facilities. So I believe that the bill that was passed, the ABC addressing barriers to care, was that comprehensive legislation, way overdue. And I commend the legislature for finally adopting it, that it's going to now standardize credentializing forms. It allows for interim licensures for those behavioral specialists, because the problem is there are not enough professionals to provide services. We clearly found that during the COVID crisis. But it's a mental health workforce pipeline, a number of things. But it needs to be funded in a direct source from the sports betting. It hasn't been it shouldn't just go into the general fund. Some of that should go to mental health care.
Okay. Kind of a follow-up on that. We'll start with you, Mr. Elliot. Obviously, bringing home the bacon, earmarks, funding is an important part of being a state representative. Besides that, however, please highlight a specific policy aim that you will focus on early in your term.
Sure. Look, the Rourke Bridge is clearly an earmark that there's, part of the bipartisan legislation that using infrastructure, federal infrastructure money. And that's important. I mean, those are the earmarks that we have to track, because the city got $10 million to start the project, and we know that's a $170 million bill. I think I just outlined the first policy. I think we need to fund mental health care without a doubt. The second most important thing is the economic development bill that currently rests in conference committee. That provides tax relief for so many people, and hundreds of thousands, quite frankly, whether it's a circuit breaker tax increase for our senior citizens, or relief for our renters, increases it from $3,000 to $4,000. But first and foremost, how about giving the money back to the people that paid excess taxes? That should be priority number one. That should go out the door as soon as possible. So I would hope the legislature takes that up. I think it's important, particularly in time where we see inflation taking its grip on middle and low income families. And lastly, I would say an important policy issue is heating fuel. We're going into a very, very dangerous period, and I would file legislation. It does help the low income, but middle class people are caught in the middle, and they need assistance for fuel assistance too. So I think that threshold has to be increased. So those are my three.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Ms. Miller, besides bringing home the bacon, as they say, please highlight a specific policy aim of your first few months in office.
Okay, I also believe we need to address inflation. Inflation is, inflation in the state, we're outpacing the rest of the country. We know, a lot of people don't know the cause of inflation, but it was caused by shutting down our oil production and also passing bill after bill, trillion-dollar bill after bill that has caused the inflation. We need to try to end the inflation, and what we can do in this state with, obviously the help of the governor, we need to get rid of the wasteful spending. We need to bring more gas and oil into the state to bring prices down. We need to look at every way we can cut taxes in the state. We could maybe reduce or cut the gas tax. I would also support piped in natural gas. We need to also make competitive prices among the electrical suppliers. I think that would help to have some competition on the prices for electricity. The business people need to. I think I would meet with business people and try to get some ideas of any way we can try to cut inflation. I just heard this the other day that even New England, not only is our gas and oil expensive, but we don't have enough of it. So it's going to be a huge problem this winter. And I think we need to do something about that immediately.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure you've both been asked repeatedly about the millionaire's tax or fair share amendment, however people want to label it. I want to look at it from a different perspective. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts currently has a $3 billion tax surplus that they are required to give back to the taxpayers. If we have a $3 billion tax surplus already, do we need any additional taxes? Ms. Miller, I'll start with you.
I don't believe that we do. And if I'm afraid that if this millionaire's tax does pass, that it's going to drive more people out of the state. Last year, 47,000 people left the state of Massachusetts. And to add another 4% tax to people, to millionaires, is certainly not going to help. Those people do pay taxes in this state, and they are business owners, a lot of them, they're taxpayers, and the last thing we need is for those people to leave the state. But the state continues to get less and less affordable for people. So I would definitely vote no on that question, and I hope that other people do, because it's going to trickle down. Again, it's going to trickle down to the middle class. And we always seem to get left holding the bag when it comes to taxes.
Yeah, no, pardon me. It's catchy.
It's contagious. Be careful, Ms. Miller.
So, with this question, the purpose behind it was to fund two large, whether it's services in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts: education and public transportation. If I had heard anything from the thousands of doors, 2,500 doors that I have knocked on since April, people want their roads, they want their bridges, they want their transportation, they want their public transit improved. And I completely agree. If we want less people to drive on the roads, you have to have a reliable public transit system, which I took for decades. And it was less expensive, it was more convenient. However, it was unreliable. In some instances, it was safe. So do we want to saddle that with taxpayers, the middle income people that ride those trains, that the cost on a one-way trip into Boston is $11. It's $22 just to get to work. And then you got to pay for parking. I know. I did it on a regular basis. That's a lot for, I consider myself a middle-class person paying those bills. So I think the millionaires can pay a little bit more. However, I'm concerned, and as a legislature, I'm going to make sure that, because there's some misnomers out there that those funding is not going to go to public transportation or education. And if you look at serving on the local level for all these terms, as a term as mayor, who is the chair of the school committee, we need to properly fund education. If there is one need, in my opinion, we need school resource officers, additional school resource officers, and we need scores of mental health and behavioral specialists. That's where the needs are. I listen to the teachers. I listen to the administrators. Can we possibly fund? We talk about, can we afford it on the local level? And we want to cut taxes. You have to pay for these services somehow, because parents and families expect it, and people that are paying the taxes expect their roads, they expect their bridges to be safe, and the magnitude of those costs cannot be borne by us. So the people that make a little bit more can pay a little bit more. And by the way, Massachusetts is a flat tax, and the people that make a little bit more, they find the loopholes in order to pay less taxes. So that's my position.
Okay, thank you. But,
On to that.
go ahead.
Is my understanding that this money cannot be earmarked for roads, bridges, schools, that it goes into a general fund? And with all the $1 trillion bills that our federal government has passed, we are supposed to be getting money, I'm assuming, one of them was actually called an infrastructure bill, even though a small percentage of it was for infrastructure. So that money should be coming our way, and we can use that money for our infrastructure and not have to take the chance of having more taxpayers leave the state, which ends up with the rest of us paying more taxes.
Mr. Elliott?
We can continue a little bit more of this debate, but that's the job of the legislature, to go down and say these monies are coming in for these purposes, and that's what the intent is. And that is my job as a legislator, to make sure, because I know from my experience the needs, and that communities, municipalities cannot afford. Most communities are at their levy limit. Look, there was tax increase in the city of Lowell, and I can tell you, for as long as we sat there, and for many years, we had bare bone budgets. So the education system is consistently looking for money to hire people they need in the classrooms, to keep our classrooms a manageable size. And on the local level, we just can't do it anymore. Look at the cost that the taxpayers have to absorb for the additional funding at Lowell High School, $38 million. I'm going to go and fight at Beacon Hill to save MSBA. Us in Worcester, they're two anomalies. You need to help us out. People in Lowell can't afford those increases.
Okay. I'm going to use your answers to that as an opportunity to get to something. And the question is slightly different for the two of you, but we're starting with you on this one, Mr. Elliott. As a Democrat, you're going to go there and you're going to be part of the majority party, a very large majority. But there will likely be issues that you may have personal disagreements with that your party is going to want passed and ask your vote on. Give me one area where you believe the Democratic leadership in Massachusetts has kind of failed to do right by the people of your district in particular.
Of my district in particular, I'm just going to speak to State Representative Tom Golden. He did a phenomenal job and bringing resources home. And I think that's the That is one of the utmost important responsibilities. Whether it's park funding, or look, there's a Centralville Riverwalk that has earmarked money as a result of Representative Golden. That's the primary person. Am I going to disagree with similarly that I did with the Lowell City Council? My first loyalty are the people of my district, first and foremost. We have to listen to them, and we have to vote in their best interest. To get to your question, is there one particular that the legislature has taken a position on that I may not agree on? I'm going to vote on how I believe, and maybe it may not be part of the leadership, but again, my responsibility is to the people of the 16th Middlesex. And hopefully you come to a compromise. But I hope to go down as Governor Baker did. It's got to be a bipartisan effort on all of these, and that's where Washington is failing. It's party driven, and things don't get accomplished, and it ends up on the municipalities and the states. And there's got to be a bipartisan effort, and that's what I'm going to do down there.
Ms. Miller, for you, the question is slightly different. If you're successful, you're probably going to walk into a chamber where you're going to be overwhelmingly outnumbered. How can you be effective in getting the policy positions that you've already spoken about and will continue to speak about this evening and throughout the campaign? How will you be effective in getting any of them through and being able to build some kind of a coalition that's going to require a significant number of Democrats to get your priorities passed?
Good question, Teddy. I've thought a lot about this. What I plan on doing is I plan on having as many conversations as I can with the Democrats. I would start with the moderate Democrats, and my questions to them would be, with with having the chance to run this state for so many years, do you think these policies are actually working for the people of this state? I don't think they are. And I would love to be able to work with the Democrats, but we need to start using common sense. And so I would try to make them realize that their policies are not working for the people, and that there are so many facts that show that they are not working for the people of this state. Again, going back to how many people left the state last year. So that's what I plan on doing, and I'm hoping that if we get the right governor, that that will be very important. So we can start reversing course in this state. We're going in the wrong direction, and we need to reverse course. And I plan on trying to having a lot of conversations.
Did you want to follow up on that, Mr. Elliott?
I can't agree with my opponent that this state is going in the wrong direction. Massachusetts has the premier universities. We have the world-class health system and hospitals. We're rich with history and culture. Affordability is an issue in Massachusetts, but it's an issue across the country. Where Massachusetts isn't out on an island by itself struggling with fuel and gas. That's nationwide. There are some things that we can do. You asked me about a policy. I just wanted to follow up. I believe the economic development bill should not have been left on the table in July. I think that money, people need the money now. And is it going to solve the economic woes? No, but it does belong in its pocket. Is the $3 billion surplus going to continue? If you look at those revenue sources, it's capital gains. People bought a lot of cars, excise tax, some sales tax, sales tax. People were buying things. And yes, some income tax. So are we going to consistently have a $3 billion surplus? No. So how do we fund these improvements that have been outlined in the Foundation Review Commission for Student Opportunity? How do we fund our education system? We clearly know that our roads, our bridges are grossly under repair. And how are we going to pay for that? We can say we don't want to raise taxes, but these things don't get done, and it should not be on the middle class.
Ms. Miller, did you want a moment to respond to that?
Yes, the $3 billion surplus. there shouldn't have been any question about that. I mean, that was in the hands of the Democrats, and they couldn't get it done. They couldn't get it back to the people, which just tells me that they don't, they're not too concerned about the taxpayers. And we are one of the highest tax states in the country. Again, we're outpacing the rest of the country as far as inflation. So I do believe we're going in the wrong direction, and I could, I don't want to go on and on, but climate change, what we're doing with climate change in this state is an issue. It's making, people poorer in this state.
Okay. Let's move
Well,
on.
can I just jump in? I mean,
Sure.
so I think Governor Baker has done a very good job in working with a Democratic legislature. And I think his years, and I can tell you just from our experience in Lowell, he made commitments to the University of Lowell. He made commitments to the Judicial Senate. Those were not being accomplished until he came. And I do think that he proposed a $700 million tax cut that I support, because that affects all the working families in Massachusetts, and I think that we should act on that. And I do think that he, this bipartisan cooperation needs to continue. Hopefully, Maura Healey is going to win, and I'm going to go down and have a good working relationship with her. And I may not agree all the time with the legislature and take some votes in the best interest of my district that may not be, coinciding with the leadership, but that's priority number one. But I'm going to have that good working relationship because it is in large part about supporting the district and the city.
Ms. Miller, care to add anything else to that?
I'm good.
You're good. Okay. All right. Let's move on to something that's concerning to me as a father of a 5 and a 3-year-old and many parents who I am talking to. Last week, the CDC opened the door to states making the COVID vaccine part of the regular childhood vaccination schedule, and that could potentially open the door to states making it mandatory, states or school districts making it mandatory for young children to get the COVID vaccination in order to attend public schools. Would you support or fight any such effort to make that happen? We start with you, Ms. Miller.
I would absolutely fight that effort. I mean, this is going to lead to more mandates. It's going to force parents to subject their children to an experimental vaccine in order to have access to school. Children are low risk, and there is no benefit from the shot. Long-term effects right now include myocarditis, future fertility problems, and negative changes to the immune system. This does not make sense. I do not trust the CDC at this point and Big Pharma. And it's just another problem. We're just creating another problem. It's reckless, it's irresponsible, and it should be up to the choice of the parents whether or not their child gets a shot. This is nothing like the vaccines that children get when they're younger, the ones they're proven vaccines, they're proven to work. And, this would not be a good situation in this state.
Mr. Elliott.
I don't think we're there yet when it comes to vaccines. When COVID hit, we had thousands of people dying, and we all wanted to stop. We had hospital rooms. Both of my girls are nurses. We had hospital rooms flooded. Overwhelmed nursing staff, overwhelmed. It was a very difficult time, and there was a process that the FDA did approve vaccines, which I think saved millions of lives. And it was an accelerated process under emergency measures, and at that point in time, I think it saved lives, and I think it was effective. However, vaccines for young children. We're not there yet. I don't think the science is there yet, and I would not support that for little children. They're not in the at-risk group, so yeah, that's how I feel about it. Over time, look at whether it's chicken pox, whether it's measles. You know, there are vaccinations that have long proven evidence of being effective without side effects. And I think there still needs to be a lot more research and evidence and data before we go there.
Okay, so it sounds like both of you at this moment are against any type of effort to make a vaccine for children mandatory.
Yeah.
That said, during the pandemic, what we saw is an incredible expansion of executive powers. Governor Baker and the executive branch got to do things unilaterally without legislature approval. How would you combat, or would you combat, any such efforts in the future, be it on the childhood vaccination issue, or if some COVID variant were to have we see an incredible spike in cases again, and some folks would want to institute these types of measures? How would you make sure that the legislature has an active say in this and not just cede everything to the executive branch?
Sure. Measures in terms of mandating vaccinations for children that are under the age of 18? In that in particular?
No, all around the various things they did, the masking, the lockdowns, the limit of hours on private businesses, et cetera, all of that. Were that to start coming up again, should the legislature just kind of sit back and say this is an executive decision?
We are a voice of the people, and that's why there is a bicameral legislature with an executive. No, I think we have a say. I think we need to follow the science. I think that, look, I just got my 4th booster. I wasn't really, I have a pre-existing condition with asthma, but I don't want to take the chance. So I do think when those mandates came in, there was a pandemic and it was affecting and transmitting. It's highly contagious. So I thought masks helped. I don't think there's one silver bullet that solves the problem. Vaccinations, I know people have different opinion on. I got the vaccinations. I got it anyway. Did it stem the tide? I feel that it was beneficial at a point in time where the entire planet, the entire world was going through this pandemic. And look, this is not the first time. Look at the Spanish flu that killed 50 million people. So I think we took precautionary measures, because if we sat back and we did nothing and people kept dying, people kept, our emergency rooms were overwhelmed. We didn't have ventilators. I think we would have been in a much more serious situation. To answer your question, do I think that I should be involved as a legislator, as a voice of the people? Absolutely.
Ms. Miller.
Yes, I do believe that the legislators should be involved in making these decisions. I think that we were over mandated in this state. I believe that businesses, too many businesses were shut down, and on one hand, a big box store could be open, but on the other hand, a mom and pop store could not be open. I never understood that. I think that it went on much too long in this state, and I also think that the children really suffered. I mean, being out of school for the length of time they were out of school was, didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. So again, I think we need more common sense when we make decisions in this state. And that was a different crisis. I mean, we haven't had anything like that I can think of in my lifetime. Well, hopefully we have nothing like that again, but I don't think it was handled that well. And I hope we have, we learned from it, and we don't go down that road again.
Since we've started talking a little bit about schools and children, this trend began at the onset of the pandemic, but it hasn't reversed itself yet. Public schools are losing students to charter schools, private schools, and I don't know if charter schools are technically public schools, but private schools and homeschooling has increased significantly in the Commonwealth and around the country. What initiatives could you push to reverse that trend, or should we just be happy that children are getting the best education that their parents believe they can get? Ms. Miller, you lead off on this one.
Well, I think that the parents have a right to choose where their children are going to go to school. I think this happens because they don't trust the public school system at this point. Well, not necessarily the school system, but the unions. They're very powerful in this state, and I think that they overstepped when it came to this pandemic. So I believe that the parents have the right to send their kids to any school that they want, and I think the money should follow the child. I think, another way to reverse this is, but teachers. I think we need more teachers, and we need good teachers. Not that the ones we have now aren't good, but we need good teachers, and we need to be teaching the subjects that need to be taught in the schools. We do not need to teach, CRT, and we do not need to teach gender studies in the schools. And I think that's a big problem. I think that if that was taken out of the equation, then more parents would feel better about sending their kids to public schools. And I think Jeff Deal came up with a Parents' Bill of Rights that I agree with. And I think that clear lines need to be drawn with schools. And there needs to be, an understanding between teachers and parents and the administrators as to, what the rights are of the parents. And everybody needs to respect those rights.
Mr. Elliot?
My experience in schools with both of my children was that there was transparency. I mean, if you want to go to school committee meetings, they're completely open. They talk about curriculum all the time. I'm not aware of any critical race theory being taught in Lowell public schools. I've asked teachers and administrators. I do think parents should have a voice, should have a role. And for the longest time, the city of Lowell had a citywide parent council where these exact issues were talked about on a regular basis. There are parent-teacher organizations. So I do think there is parental involvement. I think we have to be careful. If students feel that they want to talk to their teachers about something they can't talk to their parents about, and in large part, we see and we hear, and I know the Bill of Rights in New Hampshire was just defeated, and a member of the Republican Party was going to veto it. So I think it's and I thought that particular issue when it comes to students needing to talk to professionals, to talk to guidance counselors or their teachers, and that reporting requirement is a very fine line, because what we do know is we're all concerned about teen suicides. They're on the increase, and they need somebody that they need to be able to talk to. So I do believe, as a parent, I went through it, I want to be involved, but I think the curriculum we teach, stick to basics, but also teach children about, I can tell you, being on the city council, bullying. Bullying is a huge issue, and it shouldn't be tolerated. My daughter went through it, and there was that open communication, and those are the things that. So should parents be involved with? Without a doubt, 100%. There's great opportunity in Lowell public schools. However, when it comes to gender identity and some other issues, when it comes to suicide, if they feel they can talk to their guidance counselor or their teachers to save that child's life, then that's an important element that we need to allow.
Okay. Sure.
Are you saying that the parent shouldn't know that they're talking to the counselor or the teacher?
I think that students should be able to talk to their teachers if there are very sensitive issues when they can't talk to the parents about it, if it's going to prevent a suicide.
Care to respond to that?
Well, I disagree. I think the parents should be involved in every aspect, and I think the parents may step in. And if we're talking about suicide here, then if it was me as a parent, I would step in, and there would be a psychiatrist or a psychologist involved at that point. So I have to disagree with that.
Okay. Since 2020, years of gains in workforce gender equity have been reversed, as many women were forced to quit their jobs to to stay home and homeschool or work with their kids. Other issues have now been exacerbated because of that. Accessibility, cost of childcare. If elected, what will you do to make childcare more accessible for the working class mothers out there, working class women? I believe it's you first, Miss Miller, if I haven't lost track of whose turn it is, and I apologize if I have.
You've got some tough questions here. Childcare is one of the things that doesn't that seems not to be able to be solved. I think that I would put more burden on the companies, especially the large companies, to help out with childcare. And also, possibly if you work in a hospital, nurses, doctors, I could see, childcare in those facilities. But you're right. We need to really look into childcare because it is a problem. It's extremely expensive. And if, we're going to keep women in the workforce, if they want to be in the workforce, then we need to come up with some ideas. So I would say that meeting with everybody involved and trying to come up with a solution to this problem, because it is a big problem.
Thank you. Mr. Elliott.
An impediment to women going back to work. And not that the women is just the child care providers. I mean, if sometimes when the women are making more, then husbands have to stay home. Because the cost to go to work versus the cost of childcare is an impediment. So I support the Childcare and Development Fund. I think we need to increase that to support those families where moms and dads, we both have to work. My wife and I, we both work and second jobs and one part of that was clearly the cost of daycare. So I do think that's important. We also have to increase. I believe it's part of either both the economic development bill as well as the $700 million comprehensive tax reform to increase the earned income tax credit that benefits low income families that need childcare due to work. So it's important. It's a state issue. Municipalities, the city of Lowell and the town of Chelmsford certainly don't have the money for that. But if we want to do that, then we have to support those funds, and I do.
One of the common complaints you hear from mothers or fathers who are primarily responsible for daycare is that if I'm in a low-paying profession, if I go to work, I now no longer qualify for certain things. Should childcare, daycare be accessible and free to everybody, regardless of income level? Obvious, up to an obvious limit. We don't want somebody making $10 million to be getting free childcare, but should we look at making it free for all who need it? For working people. You're first.
For working people, people that want to go to work and want to be part of the American dream. Yes, we've got to make it affordable. Free, that's something that we'd have to take a look. For some people, they can't afford it, so it's more beneficial to stay home. Sure. What am I making? How much is it going to, when I go back to work, daycare versus commuting costs. There's expenses, and so I would consider looking at that. Or is it gradual? If I make more, similarly, it should be means tested. At this point, in my opinion, how much am I making and how much can I get some support in order to keep me to go back to work?
Ms. Miller.
As you know, Teddy, nothing's free. So it would, the taxpayers would be picking up the bill for this. And like other things that, we're picking up the bill for, we don't necessarily get a benefit from it. So again, I think that, it is a big problem. And I think, again, I'm not sure why a solution, we haven't had a solution to it yet, but I think that you need to get everyone together, including, big companies, hospitals, other, smaller businesses together and everybody, discuss it and try to figure out how we're going to solve this.
Okay. Shifting gears, and Ms. Miller, we'll start with you. This summer, Supreme Court ruling put the abortion issue squarely into the hands of each state. I'll give you both a chance to answer the obvious question there. However, what I'm interested in is Massachusetts acted quickly to protect the rights for providers and for patients, but they also did so for out-of-state patients who were seeking the procedure in Massachusetts. And my understanding is that taxpayer money, state money, grant money is available even to out-of-state residents who opt to get the procedure here in Massachusetts. Should that be the case?
No. I don't believe that taxpayer money should be used for the procedure. What I think is that there should be a lot more education put forward for people so they don't get to the point where they need to have abortions. And I think that they also, and there's a lot of places they can go if, once they do get pregnant, and there's a lot of other ways that it can be handled. So, particularly, there are like 36 parents to each child as far as adoption. So I don't know when it started that the taxpayer had to start paying taxes. Some of their tax money was going to abortion. So I certainly don't think that people that are coming in from out of state, that money should go. That the taxpayers should have to foot the bill for that. It's a tough issue, there's, but I really think there should be a lot more education, because I feel like sometimes abortion is being used as a, instead of contraceptives. And that, I think people need more education on that.
A point of clarification, you oppose it for out-of-state residents. Would you oppose taxpayer dollars being used for Massachusetts residents as well if you had the opportunity to stop that?
I don't think it should be used for I don't think the taxpayer should have to pay for it.
Mr. Elliot, for you?
I don't think women making those choices are being used as a method of contraception. That no, I don't. I think it's a very deeply personal issue for women, and it's their right. It's a human right. It's a right for a woman to make decision about her future. It's clearly ingrained in the Constitution, both in the 5th and the 14th Amendment. But this is a woman's right. It's a woman's right to choose. And that's what this country, the fundamental principles were based on people's right to privacy, right to I'm not going to recite the whole Constitution, but I think it's a basic right of a woman, and it's her reproductive right to make that decision moving forward. I don't think it's used again as contraceptive. But getting to your point, taxpayer funded. Look, there are states around this country. I don't think we want to revert back to 50 years ago when women were making choices and they were dying. And I don't think that we need. I think we're a better country. We are human. We are a good humanity. So yes, if they have to come here, if they're in a very deeply troubling situation and they need help, shouldn't we help it? I don't think this is just a routine thing that people are saying, oh, I can just get this done. So no, this is, I think this is taking us back to the dark ages. I think the issue has been settled on more levels constitutionally, and it's being used as a political football in an election year. And I think that's just very wrong.
In final discussion, we touched on it a little bit earlier, I believe, energy policy and rising fuel costs, heating costs. National Grid has said they expect electric rates to rise 64% in Massachusetts this winter. compared to last year, where they were already high. Gas rates will see a 24% increase, and National Grid cites supply as the main reason. Given the recent years' efforts to curb the use and expansion of fossil fuels in Massachusetts, is it time to reconsider some of these zero carbon emission goals in favor of being able to sufficiently meet the energy needs of our population here in Massachusetts until such time that renewables can be relied on to meet the energy supply in the Commonwealth? Mr. Elliot?
Look, it has to be economical, in my opinion. There's one thing people want. They want clean air. They want clean water. They want their ground clean. So I do think, let's go back to 1976, catalytic converters, where the cities of Los Angeles and these major cities had smog, people concerned about pollution. We did something about it. I think there's clear evidence, whether you believe or you don't believe climate change. There have been decades of data. People want data. There's data out there. And there's independent international panels. So if you don't believe, American scientists or, European scientists or Asian scientists, then there is this panel. And in my opinion, it is real. So should we wait till, as we did when pollution was a terrible thing and we made improvements? No, I don't think we should. However, just like solar panels, it's got to be economically feasible in order to get people. Now, that will require incentives. Absolutely. Same thing with people, you produce energy and you can put it back into the grid. I think we need to lift that threshold, which is what Governor Baker put and the legislature did in the climate bill that he signed. You cannot put limits on the amount that you generate because National Grid doesn't want you to put too much into the grid because then they don't make money. However, can we invest in other renewable energies? I do think we should find a balance because every time there's a blip with OPEC or there's a war, there's a supply issue and we see our fuel prices and our gas prices go up. That's not... It's not sustainable and it's not fair because if there is one trigger for the American people or consumers, when gas prices go up, it feels like they have lost control. They can't do anything about it. It affects their way of life. It affects, businesses, truckers. So I do think that we need to find that balance. We can talk a lot about this, but you have to set goals. And can you always achieve those goals based upon other conditions, particularly economic? You can't have people freezing in the winter. You can't have gas prices, out of control. You've got to find that balance. And I do think renewable energy, and one major issue is a transmission line from the hydroelectric generation plant in Montreal. That's got to go through. That's renewable energy that'll come right to Massachusetts, but it's being held up. So it's those things. Offshore wind. We've got to produce offshore renewable energy. That could power a great part of this state. So to answer your question, there's got to be a balance. It cannot be an economic hardship to people. It's got to be incentivized and people want to do it. And I think that the plan, the bill that was adopted, sets goals, but you can also make adjustments to those.
Just to follow up with you for a moment on that, certain places around the world, Germany in particular, that were known as the standard bearer for wind energy, suddenly realized they cannot meet their energy supply with the wind. Should we be blocking pipeline projects and others that could be able to, in an emergency situation, be brought in so we don't end up with a situation of rolling blackouts, of which New England ISO has warned about this winter in cases of extreme weather?
Yeah, look, I think we need to continue to strike that balance where you can't eliminate one when the other one hasn't been developed. I think storage, Governor Baker started in 2018 to invest in that. The storage capacity to address those very things, that when there are brownouts or blackouts, we don't have to go to the fossil fuels that sat idle. And then in order to meet the demand, you got to kick all that pollution into the air. So I do think that we need to find that balance. It cannot be an economic hardship on people. No.
So it's a great economic hardship right now on people, and I believe that it was a big mistake to shut down the fossil fuel industry in this country. If, in fact, this climate change is such a threat, I don't understand why some of the basic things haven't been done. Like, why are people still able to use private jets? Why are people able to use their yachts? These are things that don't make any sense. And these are the people that are pushing this the hardest are the people, are the elites that that have all of these toys. And I also would like to hear, I know there's been a lot of talk in the past on a lot of science, but I would like to hear right now from the climatologists and the scientists as to where we are and what they think. I don't want to hear any more from politicians. I don't want to hear from Ed Markey or AOC about what they think about climate change. I mean, they're not experts on climate change, and they're destroying our economy right now. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the technology. These, you're talking about the windmills. I think it was last year in Texas, people froze to death because it got, unusually cold. I believe they had snow, and they didn't work. And so why would we spend all that money? They are extremely expensive, and the upkeep is extremely expensive. So why are we in such a rush to everyone's becoming poor because of this. We need to slow this down, and I'll be the first one on board if this is a major crisis. But we need to slow it down right now, and we need to have a plan on how this is going to work. The way they're doing it right now is not working. And we need other options. We need to look at all the options. And I'd like to see a panel of scientists and climatologists talk to us on a regular basis. I don't, maybe somebody else has seen them on the news. I have not. Like I said, the politicians are not the experts on this, but they're the ones that are driving it right now, and they're driving us over a cliff, frankly.
You want to say something else, Mr. Elliott?
The same millionaires that she's talking about that's driving the car, the yachts and the private jets are the same people she doesn't want to tax to help the middle income people. And regardless, they're millionaires, and they could be paying a little bit more to address all of the issues that the middle class are addressing it. But when it comes to climate change, this is decades. There's decades of data now that drives legislation that elected officials have to put forward in order to address that. So I'm a little perplexed when she wants, Ms. Miller wants information from climatologists or experts just in the United States of America. There are major federal agencies, including NOAA, including NASA, including the Environmental Protection Agency, that have scores of data that justify the impact of climate change and what impact 1 degree has on our oceans, our glaciers. So I think there's plenty of information out there. It's not just coming from politicians or elected officials. They're talking about these issues because they're getting data from the International Association on Climate Change or scientists around the globe, not just Massachusetts. So
well, around the globe, they've already pushed. They're way ahead of us on this. And when you talk about Germany, the people in some of these villages are cutting down trees to burn wood because they don't have enough energy. The last holiday weekend, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, asked people not to plug in their electric cars because the grid couldn't handle it. And I listened to a climatologist from Canada a couple of years ago, and it's totally, he doesn't believe this is real. So let's bring it up again. Let's have these scientists and let's have these climatologists talk about this again, because it's been a long time since I've heard anything about it. But there's, again, we need to slow it down. We need to have a real plan, a common sense plan on how to do this.
Okay. And with that, we've concluded the questions for tonight's debate. I'm going to give you each an opportunity to make a closing statement. Mr. Elliott went first with the opening statement, so Ms. Miller, you get to go first with your closing statement.
Thank you. The Mass Legislature is one of the most liberal in the nation. We are a one-party ruled state and there is no debate. Because of this, we had a net population loss of 46,187 in the state just last year. If question 1 passes, we will lose more taxpayers. We have a broken transportation system. Our infrastructure is in need of attention. A prime example, the Rourke Bridge. I will make that my mission to ensure that funding is in place and the work commences on that. We are accepting illegal immigrants at the rate that we cannot afford. This is a burden on all of our services, schools, hospitals, housing, police, and fire. We can no longer promise them a better life. This is not sustainable. The citizens of the state cannot afford to pay higher taxes or higher food and gas prices. The laws that are passed in the state do not benefit the average middle-class, hard-working, tax-paying America. The Democrat Party is no longer the party of the working class. The left is destroying the state in the name of climate change. We are not ready for it, as I already said, but this happened to me in my statement. We do not have the technology or the infrastructure. We cannot afford it, and there is no plan. As your representative, I will work to address and create solutions that deliver results. I will look at legislation with 3 questions in mind. What will this cost? How will taxpayers receive a return on their investment? And how will this benefit my district? It is time they step aside for new ideas, new energy, and genuine interest in improving the lives of we, the people. Even if you have never voted Republican in the past, I am asking you to help me help you. I will do everything in my power to make you a priority. I hope you will cast your vote for Republicans in November and help to reverse course and bring back common sense, fair policies to the state. We can no longer afford the Democrats.
Thank you, Miller. Mr. Elliott, your closing statement.
Thank you, Teddy, and best of luck on Inside Lowell. Look forward to coming back here at some point in time. But I'd like to thank the voters who supported me in the primary. I'd like to also thank Zozaniku, who ran a great campaign. It was issue oriented. It wasn't personal. It was very respectful, and I look forward to working with her in the future should I be elected. But as I mentioned in previous debates, I want to go to Beacon Hill to fight for the people, just as I did as a city councilor. There's 160 state representatives. Your tax dollars going to Beacon Hill. It's our job to come to fight for those dollars to bring it back to the district. We have many needs in the city, not just the district. We mentioned the big projects, but there's so many other smaller projects. And whether it's social service programs, housing home, we didn't talk about housing. Remember the Housing Authority. I know the need for housing and affordable housing and how we can bring relief. We're not going to solve it ourselves in the city of Lowell, but we do a darn good job, and we continue to look for opportunities to expand housing opportunities, not just for low income, but working class, workforce housing, and the American dream to buy a home. So those are the things I plan on going to Beacon Hill. Constituent services has been priority number 1. That's one of the most important aspects, I think, of a city councilor or state representative. Return your phone calls, meet with residents when they want to, return text, and maybe I won't have the answer all the time, but I've always gotten back to them, and I think that's an important element, providing accessibility as well. So I think Massachusetts and Lowell, Massachusetts are the greatest place to live. I love this city. I love this state. We have some challenges. The nation has some challenges, but I think we do it best than anyone else. As I mentioned in my opening statement, great education opportunities, both at the elementary, state level. Just great opportunities in Massachusetts, whether it's medical or cultural, historical. And Lowell is a perfect example of that. Yes, we have our challenges and we work on homelessness on a daily basis. We work on substance abuse. When I was the mayor, we identified long before the state caught on opioid abuse. And I filed the motion to sue Big Pharma, and we're going to get some of those monies back. And I also filed that still exists today, the Mayor's Opioid Task Force. And it's bringing people together when we identify a problem. And I feel that we do it best on the local level. And I want to take that experience and bring it to the State House to continue to work for a better Lowell in Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott, and thank you to you, Ms. Miller. Thank you both for being here this evening and participating in this discussion. I think we covered a bunch of topics, and I certainly hope that the voters out there have learned a little bit more about each of your positions on the issues. I want to remind everybody that Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th, but voting is currently going on right now. Early voting, mail-in voting. The important thing is inform yourself about the candidates, the issues, the various ballot initiatives out there, and then get out there and make an informed decision and cast your ballot. We want to thank you all for joining us. If you watched us live, we apologize for the technical difficulties and for losing my voice. But this also will be on the Inside Lowell YouTube channel for eternity, really. So we invite both of the candidates to share it with your followers as well, and watch it on your own schedules at your own convenience. Thank you for joining us this evening. For everybody here at Inside Lowell, I'm Teddy Panos saying have a great night, and we'll see you again on camera soon. Thanks.